Okay, so tonight we usher in the new month of Iyar. And this week's Torah portion, a double portion, Tazria Mitzora. So here I am outside, beautiful weather. And the weather outside makes a person feel good or feel less good. Right now, the weather is making us feel good about ourselves, about the world. But the question is, the month of Iyar, as tonight we bring in this month, and then this Shabbos we talk about the Parsha of Tazria and Mitzora. And Iyar, the Shem Yishmuel explains, the Sachuchever Rebbe explains that the month of Nisan that's ending now or ending tomorrow, and the month of Iyar that is starting are very different. And there's an idea that the 12 months of the year correspond to the 12 tribes of Israel. 12 tribes of Israel. Number 1, Reuven. Reuven is Nisan. Shimon is Iyar. Now, what's the difference between Reuven and Shimon? So, the Shem Shmuel, this Sachuchever Rebbe, explains that Reuven, the root word is lirot, re'iyah, to see. Whereas Shimon, Simon, the tribe of Shimon, the root word is lishamoa, to hear. And the Rebbe explains that the difference between Reuven and Shimon, or the difference between seeing and hearing or listening, is that seeing is believing. That's common. That's easy. So Pesach, or the month of Nisan, when I see open miracles, and I talk about the open miracles, and I see the clarity, and I see the openness, I see the end game, I see the journey leading somewhere, that's easy. That's Nisan. But the goal is to also be an ear person. An ear is to hear. Now, that just doesn't mean E-A-R. The month of Iyar, of Shimon, of Simon, of the tribe of Shimon, is to be deep. Is to go beyond the surface, is to be able to hear something that is not obvious. As Jewish people, we don't believe in this in the phrase "seeing is believing." That's superficial. That's not developed. A developed person, or a person who has developed faith and a developed relationship and connection, is able to connect to God in a way of Shimon, of a way of hearing. And hence, the month of Iyar, the holidays that are in it, are not such simple holidays, or the days. We have Yom Zikaron next week. Some people that commemorate that, or the Jewish people commemorate the loss of soldiers' lives. Yom Ha'atzmaut, a day of modern day independence, which not everybody celebrates as a religious holiday. I happen to follow it. I happen to think that it's a religious holiday. That's the ideology that I subscribe to. Not everybody feels that way because it's a complicated day. Lag BaOmer, the day of Lag BaOmer, which is not so clear what are we really commemorating, what are we celebrating. We're celebrating, one idea, we're celebrating the life of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who taught the inner parts of the Torah, the Zohar, parts that's not obvious, beyond the surface. And we have also Pesach Sheni, and Pesach Sheni is the idea of really those who are impure, those who are outside of the camp, now are having a second opportunity. But even that second opportunity is godly. And that's not so simple. That's not a simple idea. That's Shimon. That's deeper. That's beyond the surface. So that's how the Shem Shmuel explains it. But Rabbi Kuksem says something a little bit even deeper. He says that when the Jewish people left Egypt, the month of Iyar was a full month. We know that there's some months that are not full, Chaser, 29 days, and some months that are 30. Nisan and Sivan are full. Iyar, this year and most years, are going to be lacking. It's not going to be a full 30 days. And there's a lot of technical reasons for that. But Rabbi Kook explains that there's two different ideas about time itself. Either time is connecting the past with the future, so time doesn't necessarily have its own value, it's just the bridge between the past and the future, or time has value in itself. That the value of the moment that I'm in is not about linking the past with the future. As an example, before we get to the example, so the idea of the month of Iyar can either be that I am linking up the month of Nisan, which is us becoming a nation, leaving Egypt, and the month of Sivan. And Sivan, Levi, or Sivan, which corresponds to the tribe of Levi, is about receiving the Torah, about receiving our responsibility. So I have the Jewish people becoming a nation, and I have the responsibility of the Torah in Sivan. So Iyar connects the two, says the Shem Yishmuel, because if I'm deeper, and if I have a deeper perspective, then I'll understand what the point of Torah is for the nation. So in order for me to go from stage 1 to stage 3, from Nisan, from the month of Nisan, from Pesach, from becoming a nation, to knowing what to do with the fact that we became a nation, I need to go through this process of looking at the world in a deeper way, of Iyar. But says Rabbi Kook a little bit more than that. Rabbi Kook explains, when I have somebody that I am in a fight with, God forbid, or somebody, two people are upset at each other, I send somebody to act as represent me, to apologize for me, or to bring out the best of me. And then when the person's receiving that person, right, when the third party is receiving this intermediary that's going between us, what happens is there's a back and forth. And this person, the in-between, the shaliach, the messenger, is actually trying to bring out the best of both parties. And because the first person apologized for what they did, and then the second person, or the person that was a victim of the crime, or whatever the first person did, it then responds with a positive message, the middleman is able to carry the best of both parties. As a result, says Rabbi Kook, the point of Iyar is not to get to Sivan, is not to get to the Torah necessarily. The point of Iyar is that it has both elements of the past and the future in it, i.e. it's the middleman that has the best of both worlds. Which means to say that the month of Iyar, the perspective that I have, the deeper perspective with the holidays that's all in the month of Iyar, is for me to go beyond the surface. It's for me to recognize that my faith is not necessarily limited to what I can see in front of my eyes, but I know that there's something behind it. So the idea of Iyar is to be deep, is to go beyond the surface. But says Rabbi Kook, that means that the goal is the month of Iyar. So therefore, in the future, the month of Iyar is supposed to be a month that's full. Why? Because the goal of both having the Torah and becoming a nation, and combining having Torah as a nation, and a nation with Torah, and the Torah with the nation, is to be able to be in the month of Iyar, where I'm able to go beyond the surface, where I'm able to have a faith that's deep, and that's real, and that's really developed. So the month of Iyar, the present time that we're in, is actually a combination of the beauty of both the month that comes before it, Nisan, us becoming a nation, and Sivan, us receiving the Torah. Let's go a step further. This week's Torah portion, Tazria Metzora, we have this idea of a person who has tsaras. Tsaras is, perhaps Rabbi Hirsch explains, falsely translated as leprosy. It's not. He goes into a long essay how it's not leprosy. It's some type of spiritual ailment. It's a skin ailment. It's a disease that has to do because of a spiritual fallacy or lacking that we have. But says the Chazal, say the rabbis, the idea of a sapachas, essentially this external is representing something that's a lot deeper. What is that deeper thing that a mitzorah has, that a person in tsaras is punished for? What is that deeper thing? So Chazal tell us, the rabbis tell us, is because the way I looked at community, the way I looked at the world, the way I looked at everything, all the relationships that I had was lacking. There was something wrong with it. So what do I have to do? What's the punishment, or what's the reaction? I have to leave the camp. And when I leave the camp, I'm by myself. I have a perspective, and I start thinking about all those things that I had in my life prior. Now let's understand that. That's very applicable for today, obviously, for obvious reasons, where now all of us in our own lives are chutz lamachane, we're outside of the city, we're living and by ourselves, reevaluating community. That's the obvious comparison. But I want to go a step further. The times that we're living in, and I mentioned this in the past, if we knew that in 2 weeks from tomorrow we're going back to life as normal, if we knew that, then we would prepare. And we would prepare for that time in 2 weeks from now. But the times that we're living in right now is we don't know when it's going to end. We don't know when life is going to be back to normal. So if we don't know when life is going to be back to normal, we're not preparing for opening day, because we don't know when that's going to be. And instead, I am forced to make today the opening day, or today the best day possible, and today, Thursday, and today, the beginning of the month of Iyar, in Rosh Chodesh, I have the responsibility to make today that much more meaningful and that much more powerful. So the fact that I don't know when things are going to change gives me perspective that today has to be the best day of my life, because I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So the fact that we're all in this state of unknown and we don't know what's going to be gives us the obligation or responsibility or the ability to make today the best. And then that comes back to what Rabbi Cook is explaining. Time, or the present, is not about linking the past with the future. It's also about that. But then there's a month, and the year of redemption, of the original redemption, and hopefully the redemption very soon, where the month actually is full. Why is it full? Because the time, or the present in and itself, has value beyond just being a link from the past to the future. But today, when I don't know when things are going to change, I learn and I relearn and I look at everything in my life to be able to appreciate it, to be able to reevaluate, to make sure that I am making the most and going deeper beyond the surface with all the things that I do have. And then, God willing, whenever that day happens and we're able to come out of our quarantine, we're able to come out of where the reaction of a mitzvah, the reaction that's given to a mitzvah, a person who has this tsaras, this ailment, in which I come back to community. But if I come back to community, I'm going to come back with a much deeper perspective. I'm going to come back to the world with much more of an appreciation, hopefully. So let us understand that the times that we're living in, ER, the month of ER, is a blessing in and itself. It doesn't need to be a link from the past to the future. The time that we're living in today is a blessing in itself, and everybody in their life being adjusted, how it's being adjusted, and everybody's life has been turned upside down. It's such an opportunity and a responsibility to really go deep, to become ER people, to become people that are recognizing that the salvation is today, that the redemption is today. The redemption is me making the most out of everything that's today, not thinking about yesterday and not preparing for the future. That is the responsibility for today. Have a wonderful Shabbos, Chodesh Tov, a good Chodesh to all of us, to the entire Israel, to the entire world, and a wonderful Shabbos. May this month bring in Ani Hashem Rofecha. May it bring in the acronym of ER, the letters Ani Hashem Rofecha, in which God should heal those that are sick and should bring comfort to all those that are mourning, and should take away this plague in a very deep and miraculous way, so we can go back to having a normal life, but understanding from the lessons of today of how to have a true perspective of what normalcy is. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Chodesh Tov.